Welcome, everybody, to Looking for the Ocean, the show where we talk about everything that Pixar has ever made and what it means to us. I'm Mark Young. I'm joined, as always, by Danny Vincent, and we are still technically on hiatus.
This is still hiatus.
But we wanted to put out a special episode because we like to do something wacky and kind of out of sequence around this time of the year anyway. So we figured that since there was recently, some of you may have seen this, there was recently a podcast released, not recently, but this was like a few months ago, called Pixar Sodas.
Yes.
And basically what this was is there's this group that they post the bit of their podcast is
not
they
a bit.
Find...
There are no bits.
Well, no,
it's
not a bit. I'm just saying, like, what they do, like the hook of their podcast.
Pilot episodes of podcasts and puts them up. It's very neat.
Yeah,
very cool.
I don't mean the bit. I mean like the actual the conceit of their podcast. Yeah, they're archivists. So they unearthed this episode of a podcast.
The name of the show is episode 1, by the way. We should probably let people know what it is if they want to look this up.
Yeah, the name of the show is episode 1 because they unearthed the first episodes of podcasts which failed after one episode. So what we have is an amazing hour and 50-minute long audio Pixar project that we got to listen to, and that I think, and that if you were on Twitter, I think you were aware of the people talking about Pixar's sodas. So that's what we're doing this episode. We have a special departure out of sync. This is the first Pixar audio project, audio feature film, and now we got to listen to it, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Yeah. And so I'm really curious because I know that I kind of came to you with this. We had a little...
for the record, I wanted to do an episode on Moana.
Yeah, well, because Moana is having like the sequel coming out soon, and the announcement was just made. But I don't know. I think that, like, you were like, Moana, we could do Tangled, and I just think it's better to do a wacky Pixar product than something that is.
For the record, this is what actually happened. Mark came to me a few months ago. Let's do Tangled, and I was like, okay. And then recently Moana 2 was announced. I was like, instead of Tangled, can we do Moana? And Mark was like, no, let's do Pixar Sodas. And I was like, alright.
Well, because I listened to Pixar Sodas when closer to when it came out, because I wondered if it was something that we could do, and now I think that it's really easy. It's really interesting that, that Pixar is releasing this thing which is so critical of their own work, and it's so like meta.
The modern day
way.
Cars 2.
Yeah, I feel like it's an
Cars
interesting...
2 is a generation ago now, I guess.
Yeah, but it's like an interesting little break in our, the normal timeline that we have where it's just, I don't know, just Pixar is not super self-aware for good or ill. And now we have a chance to see something. This is a little like, when we watched Borrowed Time, and it's like, wow, who knew that the studio could make something like this? So that's part of what's...
I would say the difference is that Borrowed Time is an Academy Award nominated pile of garbage, and this is not Academy Award nominated, but also not a pile of garbage.
Every time we go on hiatus, I spend a bit of time listening to people like talk about how they regret shitting on famous movies now that they've become famous. And then every time we return from hiatus, you're always like, this fucking sucked.
Oh, I'm sorry that the Academy Award nominated short film Borrowed Time, where the directors never went on to make anything else. I'm so sorry that this will ruin jobs for us in the future, that we don't like it. Anyway, let's
Jesus Christ. All right. So, Pixar's Sodas. This is an hour and 50-minute long audio drama. It was produced with sound effects. There's a guy reading stage descriptions.
There's some songs.
there are some songs.
There's a part where they play Fast Car.
Yeah, and the Luke Combs Fast Car, and
Yes.
it is
The old
about
version.
these anthropomorphized sodas. I don't know if it's much like Sausage Party. It's maybe just superficially, but it's kind of the same deal. It's just sodas have an adventure, and the plot of Pixar's sodas is that there's the main character Coke, who is
generic.
in love. Yeah,
No actual personality traits.
I just, well, I don't know. Anyway, the Coke falls in love with Pepsi, and it's kind of unclear, like, why they love each other so much. Besides, Pepsi is a girl, and there's
Pepsi
Yeah,
wants to become a pop star.
that's right.
A pop
Yeah.
star.
It's a very like pun heavy product, and they all live in this fridge in a Circle K in Naperville, Illinois. And then one day Pepsi is bought, and I don't really know if it's clear why, but everyone's like, we have to go save Pepsi. And so they embark on this adventure, which leads them to this carnival, and they do save Pepsi.
They don't want to save Pepsi necessarily. The whole thing is just because Coke promised Diet Dew that he would ask her out, and right at the moment he was about to ask her out, Pepsi got bought, and Diet Dew's like, bro, you promised we have to go after her so you can ask her out. And Coke's like, you're right, I do have to go ask her out. I think they'd be okay staying with Pepsi where Pepsi's taken to, even though they do go back to the Circle K. But in that moment in time, it's just he has to go ask her out because he promised. That's why they go after Pepsi.
Okay. This was an interesting product to use to examine that thing about, you have like your stated objective versus your super objective, and it just got me thinking about how like, Toy Story is about like loving yourself and learning to accept change, and I'm kind of taking that from, I've been watching a lot of Jenny Nicholson, so I'm kind of taking some of her thoughts about that. But it's like Toy Story is about accepting change, but then you also just like have to save Buzz. I think it's interesting. What is intriguing about this movie is that it is, I guess just about anything that is like very like self-aware and full of commentary about itself, is that you have this plot and all of the beats of the plot that have to move forward no matter what, but then stringing it along point A to point B is not always satisfying and is kind of ridiculous.
I think this thing has a problem, which I do think it does have issues. I don't think it is a perfect self-parody by Pixar, and I don't think it would be a perfect parody if, say, these were just some comedians doing it as a bit, but why would anyone want to do that? That's a little too niche to do. But regardless of who made it, I think the problem is that Pixar films are not an hour and 50 minutes long, usually.
Oh my! Yeah, I know. That was my first thing. Is I was like, "What's the
jokes?"
It's like
just
they're usually about 100
going on, and not to the point where they circle back to being funny. It's just like, we get it. I was listening to this when I was driving, and I can think of, if you bring, I'm sure there's like 3 or 4 characters in this. If you bring up to me, I'll just be like, those were the characters I definitely zoned out during, because it was like, we have to go over here to do something. Oh, but wait, we have to meet all these other characters first who aren't going to do anything. And that
just
was
an incredible cast.
Yeah, like everyone involved in this is really good. The voice acting works well, but it is just something that's like, we get it, like, like a lot of the time, which is something that feels a little frustrating. I also think it's something where, obviously, since maybe it's because it's an audio medium, no Pixar movie would have this much dialogue back and forth where they're just sitting in a room talking. Like,
did you really feel that way? I mean, I guess not. If it's like Pixar movie, which, like, a movie is just shorter, but sometimes I didn't mind the dialogue. I think some of it comes from, like, there are the scenes where Arlo is talking with his dad in Dinosaur, and there are all those those moments in Cars where Lightning is with Doc Hudson, and I feel like those are Cars is probably the most like what this thing is.
I was getting some
there's a lot of talk
vibes too
in those movies, I guess. What?
I was definitely getting some Elemental vibes as well. But I think, like, in particular, because you just mentioned the parent, I think the scene where I first noticed it is very early on, is when Coke is talking to his mother, Diet Coke. And it just is, like, the typical, and it's supposed to be these typical scenes, where it's like, oh, Mom, I just don't know what I want to do with my life. Well, you need to go make something for yourself and stop complaining to me. But it goes on for, like, 6 minutes, and, like... It just kind of repeats the same point. Like, Coke kind of just repeats the same points we've heard Mari say to Diet, Dew, and Pepsi. And it's just kind of like... This... Like, the funny part of this is that the mom is here, like, doing it. But we already got the humor out of that. And now you're just repeating the same points you just made. I'm trying not to be hypercritical of this. Because I do think it's a shame this was never made into a film. But I think the screenplay does need to be cut down a lot, and maybe they just never like wanted to cut it down because they're like, maybe we could do this on because it's supposed to be Pixar movies are usually around $200. We are told the intended budget for this film was $75 million, and
which is absurdly cheap. That's like nothing.
Yeah, so maybe that was the idea. It was like, what if we just put these Coke models and just move their mouths for a bit, and that will save us some money. Maybe that was the idea here. Yeah. I did see, I think this... but just before I say that, now you see kind of the second reason why I was like, this belongs on our Pixar podcast, because if you examine this like what it is, which is a Pixar product, it is a very rich text, Yeah. And you also are very charitable in a complex way. While I think just as a comedy, like hour and 50 minutes, I had a good time. Whatever to the rambliness of some scenes. But then what was I gonna launch into? I don't remember. Don't worry, by the way, listeners. Yeah. This episode won't be rambly because I did not bring my computer charger, and it says I have an hour and 29 minutes left, and like 10 minutes ago it said I had 2 hours and 30 minutes left. So this is a great... We're going to see how long this episode is. It's terrifying. An adventure.
Yeah. So then the other thing is that I think this is kind of more of a reaction to all kids' animated movies. And yes. I actually, on second watch, I think I saw very little Pixar in this film. I think
I heard
it
a lot
is
of
like,
Pixar.
if you take the ridiculousness of Cars, which has been parodied to death, but then you take things like, it's kind of weird because like all of these movies are actually parodies. Like Movie and Sausage Party are parodies of children's movies.
The ending reminded me of Zootopia. Mm-hmm. I think it has it has a dance party ending. Actually, it has multiple dance party endings. It has a dance party ending, and then we cut ahead 8 months to another dance party ending.
I was really disappointed that the whole deal with Pepsi is that she has somehow come up like on her own with the lyrics for the song Unwritten.
Yeah.
I think that's the title of the song, but then that's not the song she sings at the end.
Well, no, I was hoping she wouldn't sing an original song. Even though I'd like the original song, I thought it would have been funny if she's like, I came up with this other song, and be like another like it'd be like Call Me Maybe or something like that.
Yeah. Like, it should be like Yesterday, but they're all sodas,
Yesterday, but they're sodas.
But
I think... sorry. I was going to say...
I'm just in more ways, I thought it was, like, less Pixar-y. Like, it seems like there is an A and a B, but like also kind of a C plot, and then there are also supporting characters who have their own things going on, and that felt very un-Pixar to me. It seems like Pixar is very good at keeping an A and a B. But also that is why it felt a little more like Elemental,
I mean, it
where
felt like
in the
Toy
middle of
Story
Elemental
4
there's
because they go to a carnival. But moreover, the reason to bring up why I felt like Toy Story 4 is because I remember when they meet like the old guy at the carnival, and I'm like, oh, this is like the Duke Kaboom character. The character who shows up for like one scene to be like, I can help you out, and then walk out of the movie.
Yeah, that I guess it's a new Pixar thing. Maybe you could comment a little better because you watch things like Illumination movies.
Well, I just binge watched the Kung Fu Panda movies, besides the fourth one. And I think the thing that's interesting about the movies is they have this reputation that the Furious Five is not really in them. But then I watch them, I'm like, the Furious Five is like all over the second movie, which is honestly, here's my hot take about Kung Fu Panda, which if we ever get to DreamWorks on this podcast, which I doubt, we will eventually talk about. We always talk about like, what will we do when we're caught up on Pixar movies? But let's be real, I feel like we're never going to with how the detours work.
Yeah,
but my hot take on Kung Fu Panda is the first one is an average 3 out of 5 DreamWorks movie. The third one is a 2.5 star, like, mediocre sequel. But then the second one is like, oh my god, this is a masterpiece. This is a clear outlier in this film. And I hear the new one is among the lines of 3 but worse. So I'm just like, 2 is just like a weird alchemy of like, how did they get this movie to come out with like, what will people want as a sequel to our Jack Black riff on like Kung Fu movies? Why don't we just make a serious movie about, like, reckoning with the fact that you're adopted among a genocide happening? I feel like Kung Fu Panda 2 is what those animation and cinema people are, like, meant for, but it came out so early that they're always just like, why wasn't Kung Fu Panda 4 made with the Spider-Verse style? And I'm like, why don't you just watch Kung Fu Panda 2? Anyway, that's my Kung Fu Panda dissertation. All this to say is that Kung Fu Panda 3 is like an average DreamWorks movie, which I just watched.
So you're getting caught up for 4 now?
Yes, but who knows when I'll get around to seeing 4. I just felt like I should revisit them all because I hadn't seen 2 or 1 since I got before I got a Letterboxd, and then might as well watch the third one then because I've only seen it once too, you know. So another way in which I felt like this was kind of not a Pixar movie is that because it is so about sodas, it can create this like atmosphere, and it's like we are learning so much about sodas, and the way that the soda economy works is actually a lot of the dialogue in this film is devoted to how sodas are made and the history of them and the market share of different sodas. Share steaming up 6% from year to date.
And that too felt very like un-Pixar-y, where I feel like Pixar movies generally take place outside of society somehow.
One of my favorite bits in that, it comes right back to back, is like they're introducing people at the party, and then he's like, oh, here's a Jamaican guy who's not going to speak, which I thought was funny.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of like I can't speak to the diversity of their cast, but I kind of I like think it's a funny joke or whatever, but that was just a moment where I was like, surely the wealthy people at whatever institution, you know, is responsible for this could like find a Jamaican guy, you know.
Well, the other thing I thought was really
that's a weird moment for me.
That was very out of character for Pixar is they meet Cabana Jack, I believe, and Cabana Jack is there. Cabana Jack's like, hello, I can be found at all your local realtors. And I come in 4 delicious flavors. And Pepsi's like, wow, you sound great.
Yeah. I mean, it made me want to go out and purchase a soda and learn more about the world.
I did want to have soda when I was listening to this.
Yeah,
I think the best character in this, the funniest character, the best use of self-parody in this, is the character of Dr. Pepper. I thought Dr. Pepper absolutely hilarious. She's a great character. I was so happy at the end when she got with Diet Dude, just because they hang out all the time and they have no actual romantic chemistry. They just thought that it'd be good to, get together because they are a male and a female soda. And but just how what?
Oh, go on. You're about to say.
Oh, I was gonna say, I thought Dr. Pepper was brilliant because Dr. Pepper has an existential quandary of how sodas exist, but also how the stage directions don't explain how sodas work. They're like how the world makes no sense. Because I'll be real, the world does make no sense, almost joyously so. But I did keep getting confused how Coke is the only Coke in the Circle K, and people constantly buy Coke throughout this, and yet nothing happens to him. So he's comes to so he's like the personification of Coke being there. But then it was his father, who I don't remember who his father is, got spilled on 9/11, which, by the way, I was really happy
got
came
spilled
up because,
in 9/11. Oh wait, no, he got spilled on 9/11. I forget what the joke was there.
Anyway, I was glad it happened because we could bring up 9/11 again on this podcast because we have a ban of talking about that.
Yeah, you can't avoid these films are connected to the early 2000s.
Everything is about 9/11.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt like I feel like that is a joke that comes from not watching these movies. I feel like that is not a question that I have. Every time during this, I'm thinking about
the elemental thing, where everyone's like, Pixar are like, look at how great our world building is, and they're like, what? How in a world like this are there even chain link fences that you can do the joke where the water and the fire go through the chain link fence? And they're like, why do we even have these? Yes, why do you have them? It's confusing.
Well, but I just don't that's just not because they're Korean, It's not like
what? What?
It's because they're not elements or whatever. It's
the water
it's all symbolism.
The water is there. I know what you're saying. You're saying the fire immigrated there, so they didn't think about this. The water has been there the whole time, Mark and Elemental.
Yeah, because the water is represents the white people who were there.
Okay, but then why did the white people build a chain link fence they can just walk right through?
Actually, you've kind of answered your own question. Is why do the white people build chain link fences that they can walk through? But it's because there are chain link fences in the world. I don't know because there's some point at which this. I don't know
because they're there. That's all you're saying. You're pointing out the same thing Dr. Pepper is saying in this movie.
Well, yeah, kind of, but I don't know. That's just not a problem for me because I think that is just not how these films operate. In Cars, you have a car. This car is a race car driver. He's not a car. This car is a mechanic. He's not a car. They just happen to look like cars for the purposes of this film, and I don't know why, but there are cars, and that's just something we have to accept, And that's how all the Cars movies operate, is they're not actually about the inner workings of cars. They're about these people who happen to be cars for some reason. And I feel like that's the thing.
But I think
it's just not a problem that I have watching these films, and that's all the criticism about it is why are they cars? And I'm just I really don't know, but it's not. I'm not getting hung up about that.
I think it's weird in a way, though, that we are so focused on this parodying Cars and Elemental. And I trash myself on bringing up Elemental. Although I'm sure it was involved in this in some way because of the timeline. But Toy Story. I think this is obviously a Toy Story thing, too. Because it's they go on a big journey and they're trying to hide from humans sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Toy Story is maybe I don't know, an example of where they like deal with the reality of themselves. But even then, I think it's we've already had this discussion. Is I think once they lean into that in 3 and 4, it kind of falls apart for me, because once you introduce the possibility that Mr. Potato Head can like live outside of his body, then the whole film falls apart. But if you pretend that this movie is like human actors in toy costumes, then it makes more sense to me.
It's like those trailers for B-Movie, which has also reminded me of, because a diet dude's crush on a woman.
Yeah.
It's also reminded me of Shrek 2.
It does refer to many films.
When the catnip joke in Shrek 2, and then there's a line in this where it's like, haha, do you remember weed? And this is like the stage direction. It's like, do you guys remember weed in college when you could do that and not be responsible for these damn kids? You have to take to see dumb movies like this too.
Yeah, I don't know. That also felt a little bit like, who exactly are you talking about? You know, it just doesn't match up with my personal experience.
I feel like if that joke was
movies.
really to be executed well, I feel like this is me advising either Pixar or like the comedians who wrote the script for Pixar. There's, I think, a missed opportunity here in terms of presenting it the way it is. Would be like, what actors were they thinking of for these roles? Because obviously this was like a reading of a script they found that doesn't have any celebrities, but that is what parents actually care. Like, at least that's what Hollywood thinks parents care about when they go to these movies. It's like, oh wow, Keanu Reeves is playing someone new in Toy Story. I want to go see that. Or like, oh, Justin Timberlake and all of NSYNC are back together for Trolls 3, or Aquafina and Viola Davis and Kung Fu Panda. I don't know why I'm sounding like the dude from Storks. Pigeon Toady.
Yeah, well, they actually did. That's a note that I have here is, did you recognize who any of the people were? Because I recognized one person, but I wondered if that
one person as a podcaster I listened to for, I think, Succession, John Semley, but he was like a one-line role.
Oh, okay. I think Hassan Abi, who I don't really watch his stuff, but I know he's like a Twitch streamer, had a larger part. But yeah, I thought that the use of celebrity felt a little, it didn't feel as real as it could have been. And yeah, they could have done like something where they had a like guest cameo from Keanu Reeves or something like that, or someone with a more distinct voice.
I feel like it also would have been cool if they had acknowledged the big thing that happened recently.
Well, this did come out like 6 months ago.
Well, I think this was announced at the time. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But if I'm right, you guys should have waited 6 months to include this, because the whole plot line for Pepsi in this is how she wants to sing at the Super Bowl halftime show, which is, as we all know, the number one thing people care about at the Super Bowl. And then, unfortunately, very recently, Pepsi was outbid by Apple Music to become the Super Bowl halftime sponsor. So, in Sodas 2, I feel like it has to acknowledge that if they were to make a Sodas 2, because Pepsi's dream is going to be annihilated by Apple Music. That's my whole thought. That's all that was going to be. Is he talking about the Pepsi halftime show is now the Apple Music halftime show?
I didn't really register that when I watched the Super Bowl. I
registered it because one of the few tweets I saw about the Super Bowl was like some comedian being like, I got my Pepsi shirt on for my favorite part of the show, the Pepsi halftime show. And then it's like Apple Music, and it's just like, what?
did you feel weird about like the amount of romance in this parody?
I was going to say not necessarily romance. I felt like the big thing that kept... I mean, obviously, I think Sausage Party is the biggest thing this reminds me of. And a big part of that is the sexualness of it. Not necessarily the romance of it, but the, like, question... Like, the orgasms in this. The stuff where it's, like, confusing on if the tab is, like, a sexual thing or, like, what they use their hands for. It's just, and then of course like the weed showing up too, but like stuff like that and that.
It just kind of, I don't know, like made clear for me how romance, just romance and not even sex, is not really a part of Pixar movies. Like, it's something that happens sometimes, but it's not like any of these films are actually structured like a romance, like a haters to lovers kind of thing or something like that. And also, I thought it was strange. I think it's strange that we don't see Pepsi a whole lot in the beginning, and then Pepsi becomes like a major character later on, and she has her own plot. Yeah. But originally, you think it's going to be about Coke and the boy who likes to drink Coke, even though his friends want him to drink beer.
Just ditches him, really.
Yeah. So that was kind of funny. And I don't know, I thought I had this weird moment of like, are they going to like change Pepsi's character and then make her seem more appealing to Coke? And they'll both have these separate journeys where they develop as people and then come together as the end. I just thought that was something that I hadn't like seen. I don't remember seeing that in anything else, so I just thought that would be an interesting angle. And they didn't really do that, but it was like, oh, it's kind of interesting that you can have two romantic leads having different concurrent plots, you know?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, not romantic, but I do think it is very Nemo-esque. Or even Toy Story 2-esque. And depending on who you ask, Toy Story is a romance between Buzz and Woody. I don't ask me that because I'll say no, but some people might say that.
Well, I don't think that. I think that in Toy Story it isn't two different plots.
I'm
think
talking about Toy Story 2. Toy Story and Toy Story 2.
Oh, yeah. Well,
on the blue.
Yeah. But well, yeah, I see what you mean. But even then, I don't think Buzz really like goes through anything, you know?
Buzz had his arc in movie 1.
Yeah, and now it's his turn to not have an arc.
Buzz never gets an arc again after Toy Story 1. He's been arced out. They have to reset him every movie to make him stupid.
Yeah. Do you have anything that we haven't talked about yet?
I don't know. We could talk about some of the set pieces. We could talk about the ending where it's...
they meet Faygo and they're all juggalos.
Oh, no. The Faygo stuff was one of those things I was like, oh, great, more characters. And I just kind of zoned out.
It is a really long sequence. There's a point where they're talking with a new character. Like, they meet a new character, and then that character has a flashback.
I like that part because they play the harp.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't really have a lot to say about it. I just love that it felt like such a big world, and sometimes
a big world that never made any sense. Because they walked to here. It's the fervor back in the fridge, and it's like, how do you keep meaning fervor back into the fridge? Do you want to go stand next to some pizza?
Yeah, but like I just mean that Pixar films can feel like there's no life outside of this was more of a thing with like the earlier ones, and then I think you see in something like Onward Onward feels very much like this movie to me, because you go on this quest and see all of these people who are like living their own lives and whatever, and that's what I mean, is that this felt like a small story in a big world, where even something like Bug's life feels like very isolated from anything else going on outside of that world.
I think a big reason for that is to compare to Toy Story, is that in Toy Story, Woody and Buzz have a deadline to get back home. This is like, we'll find her when we find her.
Yeah.
Because the danger feels like it should be like, what if she gets drinking at this party, even though drinking doesn't seem to kill them, but occasionally it does. But it's not, because even when they all get there at the end, none of them are hurt or drunk at all. They the next day like, guess we should probably go back to the Circle K, huh? Alright, let's go.
Yeah.
The only stakes in it is at the end when his friend Ricky dies. In the post-credits scene. For not liking soda.
You could I was really trying to pay attention here, and you could tell me something like that, and I'd be like, that may have happened. I don't know. There were a few things that I think that I missed, and I had to go back and listen to. But I think I got it all. But then you're like, Ricky died.
Bit in it is when they introduce the carnival, and it shows like a beer jug, and only they don't get a voice actor. It's just the narrator saying, and he's like, the jug, like it's like those types of like jugs like you throw balls at, and one of them turns the camera, shucks, and goes, "It's a living." And it's just in the montage, and that's it. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
It's like back when I was in school, I wrote this movie that I was really proud of called Marked Up Time. That I'll never touch again, because basically what happened was I wrote the first 30 pages a year before I wrote the rest of the script, and it was a script that was coming from like a weird emotional spot about somebody, and I no longer had those emotions, so I no longer had the passion to finish it, but I also had already like committed to like writing what I wrote. And so when it came to like the day before it being due, and I had 70 pages to write, no, more like 40 pages to write, I mapped out a completely different ending that was just wacky, and my professor got mad at it, but I was like, look, I could not finish the movie the way I was planning it. There was no way I could get that done. So I instead wrote the ending I wanted to see, which would have been crazy. But all this to say is that in that sequence, whereas this was previously as grounded a time travel movie as you could get outside of, although this is why I referred to the fast car thing earlier, because there was a scene in that movie that I wrote where they go back to 2009, and it's just people going, hey, do you want to go see Transformers 2 Revenge of the Fallen? But that's not why I'm bringing this up. But there's a scene in that where they get a self-driving car that I imagine was played by... The car was named Car, and the car was, like, British in my mind. And the car was like, don't worry, I'll take you there. And it does this ridiculous stunt where it throws itself over, like, a bridge to, like, skip, like, a stone over a river. Which I was really proud of, because I looked it up on Mythbusters and it was possible. But people were mad at this. This is really funny. This whole movie, like the last 50 pages are just like this wacky ass thing, and everyone was kind of bothered by it. But the first thing someone said was like, "I don't like the bit in the car scene where the car, like, it cuts to the guy who's proposing to his girlfriend on a yacht." And the car just crashes through, and we never see those characters before and again. It was just weird you had that cutaway. And I was like, I like that cutaway. It's like a little Roland Emmerich. I'm like, nah, it's worth it. And I was thinking about that every time they cut back to the guy who was like, I gotta start drinking beer every time the guy is on. I kept thinking about the guy who, the proposing couple who got wrecked by the talking car flying through their proposal in my script.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, everything is more money. So maybe they had something there.
What? Mark, my thing was already impossible to produce. It. Time cops basically doing Tron light cycle through downtown New York 30 years from now.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, that's... Yeah. Great. I'm glad that you really, rose to the occasion.
And then all of time falls apart, and they fall into a time hole. Mm-hmm. And they meet the time god Kronos.
Oh. You like to bring in these gods and demons that humanize elements of your worlds, and that always seems weird to me. And I don't mind it. I don't mind it because it's whatever you want, but it's funky to me that I'm
wait, okay. So let me explain to you where my head is going. I was going through the ones that what's he talking about? He's probably talking about God being at the end of my play about the Shamrock Shake. He's probably talking about the Mermaid Queen who comes in at the end of my pirate play. And I was like, oh no, he's talking about how the ghost of Billy Wilder is a major role in the whole parody about poop.
Well, you're just
really talking about is Billy Wilder.
You're just never content to let something be like this otherworldly force. You always have to make them a person.
Look, the ghost of Billy Wilder is the best character I've ever written.
Mm-hmm. Special. All right. I don't know if I have a whole lot more. What do you feel?
I don't know. This was a really great thing. Everyone should check it out. It's a real Pixar thing, definitely. And it's on Spotify and everywhere you find this podcast. Just search Pixar Sodas. Honestly, we probably should have told you this at the beginning of the episode.
What? No, it's Pixar Sodas. Look it up. You'll find it.
Pixar Sodas.
All right. What are we doing next time?
975 million worldwide. I don't know. I don't have the schedule in front of me. It's whatever we said last time. And we're doing to be clear again, we don't know when next time is, listeners. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I am in the process of moving, so that's a little life update that I'm sure I'll get into more when we actually have a regular episode.
Can I say that kind of by coincidence, every time we go on hiatus, it's because you go on a cruise?
Yeah, I noticed that too. I did go on a cruise. We will, when I am moved and fully settled in, that is when we will come back as a show. So
that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
We just had to get it in on the hot topic of the day.
Yeah.
Pixar Sodas.
Today. I hope you listen to this only on the day it came out, and any other day. Mark's actually going to remove it after today.
I don't feel. I don't. Where is the thing that says the next thing that we're doing? It's a bunch of shorts
that we said last time. I'm sure it's. I remember Lose one of them, and then there's 2 Detour shorts. I think there's a Finding Dory short as well.
Yeah, it's all the shorts that were on the Finding Dory DVD. So that will come out. We're thinking of doing a bi-weekly thing. We don't really know when that's going to begin, but that these are the things that we're thinking about because we want to keep. We might even chopping.
We might put the episodes out Fridays. We might put them out Mondays. We might put them out on these days. Who knows? We might invent a day to put them out. Who cares?
Yeah, I do kind of feel like every time I find a new podcast in my real life, and I kind of have it actually, I don't listen to a whole lot, but I kind of have one for every day of the week. So I kind of would like to release this on a day that I don't have other content coming out,
Okay. Well, my thing was Mondays are nice because then you can have the whole week to look at it. Whereas on Fridays, it's I'm not going to look at this till Monday.
That doesn't really mean anything because
I guess it's more also for on Fridays when we're doing it bi-weekly. I do not want to have it be you have weeks without content of me and then suddenly on Friday and Monday you get an episode from me very quickly.
Okay.
But we'll figure it out.
Anyway, we'll talk about it. Looking for the Ocean is produced by Mark Young and Danny Vincent.
The show is edited by Julius Jefferson.
Our original artwork was done by Sarah Knopf.
This is when Mark's going to realize I never had the document open, and that's why I was vamping earlier.
I don't know. You can find us.
You can find us on social media at Facebook at Looking for the Ocean, Instagram at Looking for the Ocean Pod, and Twitter at Pixar Journey. You can email us at Looking for the Ocean Pixar at gmail.com. We also have a website called lookingfortheoceanpixar.popping.com.
Yeah, and you can find me on myoung Insta. Yeah, just look there for updates. I know it's been forever, and I have not actually gotten my
About your
fucking
website.
email thing up together. It's because I needed to like put my brain in another thing for a little while. But that's where the news of me will appear. So yeah.
Don't go to his website, I guess, because he didn't want to mention it.
Well, no, you can go to my website, myoungmarkyoungperformer.com. It's just those are reels, and you can hear what my audio reel sounds like. But I don't have the news thing of that going right now.
We're at 23%. You can follow me, Danny, at Blank What's a Letterbox for all my takes on all the movies. You listen to my other podcast, which is also on hiatus, and I'm not getting like a special episode like this, so it's going to still be on hiatus. Where I am not allowed to mention what the new Snub Club movie is until we talk about it on this podcast. So, Mark, don't you dare spoil it to the listeners of the Snub Club right now. Anyway, we talk about the movies that have the most Oscar nominations and no wins there. Anyway, this is Looking for the Ocean, not the Snub Club. So,
Yeah.
we'll see you next time, whatever that is.
Yeah, well, it's coming. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, bye.